homeownership is necessary. You can't fix housing by just going all rental. And the reason why, one of the primary reasons why home ownership is very important is because of wealth generation.
All right, welcome to the latest episode of the Greater Texas Podcast. Today I am very lucky to be joined by Robert Lee, the CEO and founder of Pearlstone Partners. Thank you, Robert, for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sean, for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks. Well, let's start with a little bit about your background. Are you from like Round Rock area? Is that where you grew up? Or where?
Yes, I'm not a native Texan, but we did come here in 1973.
Gotcha.
Right? So, and at that time I attended Round Rock High School. Westwood didn't exist.
Gotcha.
So, at that time Congress was a 2-lane road and right. 620 was a farm to market. So
right, exactly.
Long time ago.
Right. And then you went to UT?
I went to UT.
What'd you study there?
I started in Plan 2, and then I shifted over. I ended up with a history degree.
Gotcha.
And moved into real estate because, frankly, my mom started a business called Lee Properties in 1982, and she was working for MPC at the time and was doing on-site sales and opened up the Quaker Creek subdivision. I had a dabbling interest, so I ended up working for Melbourne starting out and kind of, cut my teeth on that. But
doing brokerage or like?
I did. Originally I was doing on-site sales starting out
Gotcha.
over there. And then later, as most kids are, I resisted the temptation to go into the family business such as it was, and started a couple other businesses before that. I had a carpet cleaning business earlier on, and then did some other things over. And then in the 80s downturn, I went and joined Formosa Plastics as a product manager, and then had a kind of a varied background. Ended up working for different companies doing international trade after a while, and then ended up over at Solomon Brothers for a little while, and then doing off-grade commodities and plastics trading. Wasn't a Series 7 licensed guy, but we were doing off-grade plastics and chemicals.
Gotcha.
And then my mom asked me to come back, and then I took over Lee Properties, which at that time was was depressing.
So what years would that have been?
It was 1990 when I came back to take over, somewhere around there.
And what was the market like here in Austin?
Well, the market was fairly decent. I mean, I had to do brokerage, but she had a small property management company. And actually, I think at that time, and it's not disparaging to my mom because it was kind of a mom and pops, most of our money was in the investments that we had. The management company itself generated $15,000 a year. And at that time, poverty level was 9,000.
Okay,
so
gotcha.
obviously I took a bit of a cut in
Right.
pay, go from New York to
Right.
Austin for that. But my mom said I had to come back and do this. So I did. And then and there we kind of grew the real estate company. So I did brokerage for about 30 years. In the interim there, we actually phased into starting to build and develop our own product.
Yeah.
So really my experience has primarily been kind of boots on the ground, bootstrapping our way up. Between 2000 and 2010, before the downturn I did about $65-70 million in real estate on our own in terms of development, and started doing house with garage apartments, a duplex subdivision.
All in Central Texas? Or?
All in Central Texas, right. Single family homes. We were the largest provider of house with garage apartments at that time. I was involved with the 3 city moratoriums. The super duplex, I had a bit of a concentration in terms of some of the involvement, but more from an observer position. The Super 2 family, as they called it back then, which now they've allowed for ADU or granny flats, are now back in favor. They actually killed that product on the second moratorium, and I was the largest provider of that product.
Gotcha.
At that time, we were one of the largest infill residential 1 to 4 family providers in Austin and Central Texas. And then
was that when you started in, I guess, 2012, I guess you started
that
Pearlstone?
was Robbery Homes, and we had Lee Development. We were doing 2 different tracks. We had some for sale and some asset development that we were developing. We were holding a lot of our own real estate, and then we were having to segue out into bigger product types. Like we did up to fourplexes and triplexes. Did a duplex subdivision. All went very well, and then of course the right around the time that Solomon Brothers went out, we were segueing into a bigger product type. We went into multifamily development and ended up doing 21 Pearl, but that took me about 11 years because of the downturn last time to actually eventually get it out of the ground, and then that it caused us between 2010 and now to reset. And so when we reset, we decided to reset to go a larger development. And so we set up a different team and have a very strong team right now that we're concentrated on doing a combination. It's an interesting product that we're obviously heavily into condos right now.
Right.
We've done office, we've done multifamily, we've done student housing. So really from everything from a single family standalone property to a type 1 tower, downtown tower, we've done all of it.
Yeah, I was just reviewing the OM for the Pressler condos. Those are really
We're in
exciting,
process on
right?
that one. It's an exciting project.
Yeah.
We are very blessed to have that opportunity to bring that out, and we're diligently at work at creating that opportunity. And in general, if you look at where things are, we still have a severe lack of housing.
Right. Which we will definitely get into and focus on that because it's such an important issue. And here, I want to ask one more thing about before we get into that. You're also on the Habitat board, where we do a lot of work for. We do a lot of legal work for Habitat also, but you're on the Habitat board. Is that right?
I am on the Habitat board, and right now my efforts are kind of being concentrated on growing Homebase, and we're very proud about that.
Yeah.
Through efforts of my wife, who is currently the broker for Homebase, our intent was to. And Wayne and them have done an incredible job there.
They have, yeah.
Right, and they're very good at what they do. We saw an opportunity, particularly since I'm in the development field, that there was a need where the city could use some assistance in terms of processing these for sale housing for affordable. And since now they're going to have code unlock, and they have all these other opportunities for people to participate in going on forward. Even for our own personal needs, we saw that there was, frankly, the ones that we were experiencing when we were having to close out projects, it was very strange to me that there was some kind of a disconnect because the last things to go on our buildings were the affordable units.
Interesting.
Right? And then so since they're actually a carry loss for us because they're subsidized housing, it's not really favorable for us to have things to be the last things to go on one of our projects or the affordable. And so now having been involved with Homebase and helping them establish that where they're more than just a finance arm, but they're now able to do brokerage as well.
Right.
I think this is ongoing for all developers that are having to be involved in this space for affordable housing.
Was that the issue? It just wasn't getting the word out that there was the
No,
affordable.
it's not a lack of buyers in my order. It's a lack of coordination, and not specific to the city, but I think that right now the city affordable department is a little bit understaffed.
Gotcha.
And as all departments are at the city, and they're a bit overrun. And so this way, I think that was a proposed win-win-win, because if you look at it, there's a nonprofit, which we all support,
right?
Especially with what Habitat does, is a great organization.
Yes.
Right. So they certainly could use the financial benefits of that. And then they are able to take some of the load off of the city because they're just basically a little bit overrun. And in the meantime, it standardizes and able to make the process move a little smoother. And from the developer standpoint, and that's not just for me, it's for all developers, I think that the net result is that they're going to be able to move their product faster on a already lost basis, and so it's a good thing for them to be able to do that. In fact, we're a very good basket case test for them. We just closed out our Cascade project, and this is the first one in all the ones that we've done that the affordable units closed out right around completion of construction.
That's
and
great.
I had no delay.
Yeah.
And so that's a big win for us, but I think it's a bigger win for Homebase because I think that they can show that the idea of what it's a proof of concept of idea. They definitely are able to help, and I think it's going to help everyone in this business. I think from the standpoint of what I had mentioned to council and so forth is, I know there's a huge need to try to get more affordable housing onto the market, but I think there also needs to be an equal measure that they're able to determine that they're actually able to fill those spaces.
Right.
And so not to say that there's not a lack of demand, it's the process. And in this way now, I think the city can now point and say that's also a win. They're able to fill those spaces as well as having developers provide them as well. So I think that's a win-win all the way around.
Gotcha. That's great. Well, and that leads us into the affordable housing or the attainable housing discussion in Central Texas. Obviously, I think this is an issue that almost every major city is having across the country, but certainly in Central Texas.
Every major country is having this conversation.
Right.
So
Yeah.
housing, and this is what I recently spoke of at another event. First thing I want to say is what differentiates, and this is my personal opinion, so others may differ, but housing is different than other real estate products because housing is a need, not a want. And so as other product types, which Pearlstone has done, and in past history I've done as well, office complexes, hotels, that's the difference between a want and a need. You don't have to have an office, and you don't have to have a hotel.
Right.
But everyone has to have a home.
Right.
Right? And so therefore that's a need. And that one idea separates housing from any other form of real estate. And so this is a fundamental need that we're addressing. So whether we get it right or we get it wrong or we're having huge conversations, and the reason why we're having these huge conversations is because it is a fundamental need.
And we're not meeting the need right now.
There are headwinds, right? But there are headwinds for multiple reasons. I'm very concerned about the current environment that we're in. I was also concerned about prior environment, right? None of it is healthy, right? I've been doing this for a long, long time. And, as a broker, I've never seen events like our open houses where people were literally crying when they were leaving, not being able to get an opportunity to buy. Is that
like during the height of COVID?
That was the height of COVID
yeah.
and all that period over. So here's the thing, all right? Very simple statement. We came into this market short. We're going to come out of this market shorter. There will be a day of reckoning, and we are not going to be ready, right? And it's because of all kinds of different things that are occurring, including what the feds are doing as well.
Okay, so let's break it down a little bit. First of all, what needs to be done in the grand scheme of things to sort of meet fix the issue?
I think, and here's a harbinger of bad news. Okay, I know there's a lot of talk right now about trying to drive unit pricing down and so forth, and I have a couple of thoughts on all this.
Like through subsidies or something like that?
Okay, I applaud and we support, right, all the different organizations that are out there they're doing, including Habitat. I sit on the board
right.
for their efforts. And I know, which is why Pearlstone always, we created the term, rather than using the term affordable, we did it, we called it attainable.
Right.
And the reason why we called it attainable was because people, when they say affordable, automatically assume that you're a subsidized product. And so, first of all, fundamentally, as someone that's done housing for so long, I do not believe that, And that doesn't mean that it's not exclusive, but what I'm saying is I think first off, it needs to be any and all solutions, okay? And we knew Pearlstone would never get to the price ranges or the MFI numbers that the other organizations like Habitat and Community First and other those
Foundation
groups are
communities,
over there are able to do. And so that wasn't our mission. Our mission was to provide near workforce on the upper scale, more of the 80 to 110 range in terms of housing pricing. And that model's been completely blown out of the water because of rising construction and land costs and so forth. But for the period of about 5 years, 5 to 8 years, we've been fairly successful in providing the largest amount of infill housing in the areas that are most in demand for both because of work and nearness to restaurants and livability, to where we were able to get the lowest priced housing opportunities. It's not a white picket standalone house. Austin's changing.
Right.
We're now the 11th largest market, very rapidly soon to become the 10th largest market. As a major city, density is going to have to be required for us to be able to fill this housing needs, particularly in the areas that are most in demand. And we're certainly not going to, in my opinion, do it from a 1 to 4 family units. I think that is part of the answer, and that's why I'm saying we need to do an any and all approach.
Right.
And we can't. We have enough. I feel like that there was a lot of people already working on the lower 60%, even 80% MFI now and below, in terms of efforts going at which are subsidized. As a producer, I do not believe that unless the market rate units are involved, that we're going to be able to get there on just subsidized housing. And I think that's been proven.
Because the demand is just
well, and the bang for your buck, right? In other words, it's not sustainable because the money goes and then it's not replenishable. You're going to have to constantly replenish. That's one issue. The second issue but I'm not saying that these efforts aren't necessary. They're
right.
needed. But what I'm saying overall, if you look at the amount of housing that we need, I don't believe we're going to be able to subsidize our way through. Here's a classic example, and this is an extreme. We have a project downtown that we're building right now, a Vesper that has 8 affordable units on it. Each of those affordable units, to get into the equitable requirements that the city has, is costing me roughly about $1 million subsidized per unit.
Okay.
And then the issue when it comes to downtown is, why are we subsidizing these units? Because I don't know who's going to buy them.
Right.
Because although we can fix HOA cost and initial outset, we have no control after the HOA is turned over, and that's expected that HOA costs are going to grow. So my point is that for those that are affordable, it doesn't make a whole lot of logic to say that somebody who's already in the affordable situation is going to be comfortable living in a building downtown at the prices that we have over, and 2, that their costs are going to be able to be fixed, because that would be at the that'd be the expense of all the other ones over, right?
Right.
And so I think that we should look to see, and they are talking about that, to be able to do fee in lieu of. But the other thing is that the overall concept idea, Pearlstone's mission has always been to bring the most affordable, attainable market rate prices, period. And so if the goal is each unit to be as least expensive as we can make it and still bring a Class A property to the market, then every subsidized unit that we have to do in our building means I have to spread that cost to the other units, which raises the cost to the average Joe.
Right.
And so there are first-year doctors, first-year lawyers, professors, usually younger ones, less established, that are having serious difficulty finding housing where they need to be. And
which is pretty remarkable, right?
It is pretty remarkable. And if you talk to people who really are in the know, like Wayne and them, who are experts at this, down there at Habitat, I mean, they will tell you that the median income now for affordable in Austin is $110,000
Wow.
household. And I'm telling you guys, that was not nearly there even 5-6 years ago.
Right.
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 So that's frightening.
It is. And when you're talking about, I know this is an issue that both you and I have when you're talking about the housing increasing and that doctors and whatnot being able to afford, then you have what we're seeing, which is less home ownership overall, right?
There's a declining home ownership, and I think actually nationally. In fact, I had just sat on a panel over that somebody had mentioned that from Denton, that they're dying right now. Denton is about 33, and I may be misquoting, but if I remember correctly, they were saying that Denton is about 33% home ownership. Our home ownership was pretty high. It was pretty high in Austin, north of 50%, but it is going to be declining. There are a lot of systemic risks to home ownership right now. So let's talk about why that's important.
Right.
First off, home ownership is necessary. You can't fix housing by just going all rental. And the reason why, one of the primary reasons why home ownership is very important is because of wealth generation. All of us that have been younger, and the majority of the history of the U.S., if not all of the history, people statistically have gained more wealth by owning a primary residency. Parents did that, our parents did that, so forth and so on. Now we're getting generations to where they're losing those opportunities. So we are potentially creating a systemic risk down in the future for future generations in terms of wealth development. That's one problem. Now, some of the things that are happening, for example, like this current trend where we've got Wall Street and groups like that buying
single-family homes
and renting them out, are they really moving the market and changing the market? No, but every little bit tends to take away from other homeowners' opportunities.
Right.
And that in and of itself is not a really a good look, especially in the area that we're in right now. One thing though, that as I was saying before about being a harbinger of bad news, there may be some concept ideas out there right now that we're going to see a market turn back, and we're going to see a actual turning of the clock, and then we're getting real estate prices and going down. That may seem some softening probably the next couple of years, and we might see some correction to some extent. But in general and as a whole, I think it's fairly unlikely, if highly unlikely, that we're going to be looking at a house being cheaper than it was 3 years ago. Or even 10 years ago, right?
I mean, if for no other reason than there's just massive amounts of people moving here.
Well,
right?
we have a supply imbalance.
Yes.
Right? So under any circumstances, logic would say that supply imbalances, unless you correct that supply issue, is going to not fix the problem and cause values to go down, right? Right now, what we have is a suppression of demand because of what the feds are doing, right? Mortgage rates are extremely high. So what we're seeing is a drop in demand, but what the feds are not doing, which is I don't believe their goal, is to crush permanently demand. And so actually we have millennials and so forth who are frankly reaching the age of 40 now. Some of the older ones are reaching a relative age, right?
Right.
Where you have household formations and you move out and you have your own space and you're not living with mom and dad anymore and things like that, or they have, and then life goes on, and then that's how they kind of get ahead. And so that's not happening. But yet the demand is there, because the minute we get a little bit of an interest rate drop on mortgages, all of a sudden buyers surge.
Right.
So we know that it's all coming. And we also know that eventually mortgage rates will go down. And when they do, whatever the prognosticators are going to say in terms of what time, then what we're going to be faced with is an environment where right now a lot of guys have got projects that are doing pencil down. So a lot of guys are not delivering and delivering less and less units, whether it be rental or for sale. And so that That's a problem. We came in short. We're going to come out shorter of this even more.
And real quick, what's the reason that pencils are down right now?
Well, I mean, you have to, economics have to work,
Right.
right? And the risk level has gone significantly higher because of market uncertainty. And so that for people that are doing development, I mean, yes, there's big potential gains, but there's also big potential losses. And so there's a market rate risk that now has to be even factored even heavily and more so. And so as the feds are moving in the direction that they are, this is going to cause people to pause even more and more. In the meantime, yes, we're seeing a huge suppression in terms of activity,
Right.
in terms of mortgage companies, title companies, buyers, and so everything else. But this is not permanent. This is temporary. And so eventually they will all come back. And when that does come back, and this was something I had said on the last meeting that I had over, my product type right now is on an average of about a 5-year cycle. So it takes us about a year to go identify an opportunity, a site opportunity.
Right.
And then the city of Austin, it takes about 2 years to get entitlements. And then it takes me 2 years or so to build it. And then about another year to stabilize the building, get people moved in, and people transition. So you're looking at 5 years from get-go.
Right.
Okay. And I'm doing right now, we're attempting to pull about $1 billion in product out. That's a slowdown from where we were.
Okay.
And that translates, because we're in a more higher end market, about 800 or 900 units. And this is an averaging basis, so some are more expensive than others.
Yeah.
But if you look at that cycled over what we predict to be a 5-year cycle, that's about 200 units a year.
Right.
That is not a lot of units.
Right.
It sounds
Right.
horrible when you talk about the numbers that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But if you look at the total number of units, it's a drop in the bucket. And the problem is, typically for our product type, remember, nobody's in there in a market by itself. So right now it's a little better time because multifamily are having some difficulty getting numbers to work. Office is a little constrained right now. Hotel also is nobody's sure where. So usually the way that the land use works, and you know this, Sean, is that you get best use, and so office generally is one top. And then it's hotel, and then it's multifamily, and then it's for sale after that. The for sale seems to be almost an afterthought. And so this is where there's very few groups like us that are out there providing housing in areas that we're doing. And that I don't necessarily, and that's why we don't think that anyone else out doing what we're doing is a competitor, because we just can't get enough stuff on the ground.
Right.
And that's the answer, is to get more stuff on the ground. Now,
Density,
we have to be
right?
realistic about, and it has to be dense,
Yeah.
right? We can't yield out. We have to yield hundreds of units,
Right.
right? And we've got all kinds of examples of land use, right? Where instead of an 8-unit yield or a 2-unit yield, you're able to do 40 or 60 or 200 or 300, and then costs can be brought down, spread over. There is a point of compression. I call it the compression point, to where our real cost, what cost of wood, cost of concrete, cost of steel, there is a compression point that you cannot go past unless materials go down. And I don't see that happening. And then the other question is this. We don't want to see a massive wage correction in the construction industry, and we won't, because we have a shortage of labor, right? But even if we did, I don't think everybody would applaud for people to make less money.
Right.
I don't think that's the answer either.
Right.
Right. And so that's where we have a kind of a circular problem here, right? And so therefore, I do not believe that we're going to be looking at a price reduction as most people think. We're going to see hopefully a slowing of the growth rate of housing costs.
Right.
In the meantime, maybe wages can catch up to be able to allow us to be able to do this, so they're subject to what the federal government's going to do. We do know right now, based on where we are on the fight with inflation, that it's going to create additional housing shortfalls in terms of delivery of units. And that's not going to harbor well. That's not going to be a welcome message for the near future, because eventually conditions will change
Right.
on
Right.
financing, and then I think we're going to be looking at another huge run, right? Which also, when you talk about demand not being able to be serviced with a number of units
That are
on
coming.
supply,
Right.
that's economics 101. You're looking at rising cost again, and we're going to see another run if we're not careful on what we're doing.
Well, and I think I saw in an interview you did a couple of years ago, you had mentioned that you lived in a lot of big cities around the world, and
I've lived in quite a few dense cities over there, and it's we're being faced with, and I get this whole thing about equitable and wanting to be doing the right thing, and I'm not saying that anybody's wrong, but what I am saying is that in reality, and this is what Pearlstone faces every day, is that we have a box, and it's not an artificial box. It's a box created by not just ourselves, because when you do a development, it's not just you're not king of the world. You
Right.
can't just do something on your own.
Right.
You have to do it with partners, lending partners, finance partners, construction partners, and we have great teams that are working together with us. But they all have also constrained requirements and rules as well, because they're ongoing businesses, and also, they're also putting other people's money to risk as well. And so there's an economic reality, and so we have a box that is fairly immutable to some extent. And so you only have so many ways to do this. And if we have too many wishes and wants to be put into that box, then eventually not everything's going to fit in the box. So eventually what we're saying is some things are going to have to give. And that's true of everything that the city faces, right? Because that's just reality.
right. Right.
All households face the same issues.
Right. Yeah. Well, we have, I say this all the time, but we have a huge number of people that are going to be moving here, and these issues, if we don't deal with them today.
Well, right now, I understand to be, we have 186 people a day moving in net.
Yeah.
There's 1,000 people a day moving into Texas. Right. Austin's blessed for having about 186, and that was the last numbers I remember coming from the chamber, regular chamber, regular versus Asian chamber, and so that's a huge influx.
Yeah.
Right, and jobs are still being created. I do think that we're going to have some headwinds going in, especially with high tech, but again, these are all temporary. City's vibrant. Future looks really good.
Right.
The interim looks very difficult. And again, one thing to think about is every market is different. Real estate is a local issue. Okay, and the markets are local. I mean, there are areas where and everybody's seen this, where the prices could differentiate between one street versus another.
Right.
That's how close it could get.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So I think even when I was speaking with some people over at a state level event, I think the issue really is looking at. That's why I think we have an any and all approach, and we can't just concentrate on the lower most at risk groups, although I believe they're extremely important. But I think they've got a lot of help. But there are those that are outside of that are not getting a lot of help right now, and they're just as much as an importance to our community as the ones that are most at risk, right? And I'm not saying that I don't support that effort, but we have to remember that it has to be for all, right? Number one. And then the second thing I think we need to really focus on is that the understanding that Austin is I call Austin like Tokyo. We're kind of landlocked.
Yeah.
Part of it is because of our code rules and so forth, but a lot of it is because of the economic reality. I mean, just to look at downtown right now, we've got the University of Texas.
Right.
We've got the state capitol and the city services, all of which are growing, right? And then the rest of us are in them. And then the amenities that downtown provides. So it's getting a little more crowded, and so therefore opportunities becoming less. I think in terms of housing, because of the hesitations on some of the other product types, this gives us a window of opportunity to provide more housing, but that's not a given either based on the current market situation financially and economically.
Gotcha. Well, Robert, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. And thank you for what you guys are doing at Pearlstone to help solve some of these issues. And really appreciate you coming on the show
No, sure.
this week.
Here.
All right.
You're welcome.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.